Hi, and welcome to Answers News for August 27, 2018. It's hard to believe we're almost through the month of August and into the fall, which I'm really excited about. I like fall. It's one of my favorite times of year. Around here, for those of you that are in areas where you don't have seasons, might not be able to appreciate it as much, but I love the changing of the leaves that we're going to see here soon and the cooling down of the weather. I'm not a fan of this 90-degree stuff that we're having right now. But anyway, so it's just Bodie and I today because everyone else is busy doing something else.
They're all traveling or gone or
for events. So I know on Thursday it'll be you, and then you, me, and then it'll either be Avery if she hasn't gone into labor yet, who's our very pregnant millennial Canadian that's on here. And if not her, then it will be Dr. Tommy Mitchell.
Who helps deliver babies. So maybe we should have him here anyway.
Maybe we should have him here just in case. Somebody asked me, well, what if she goes into labor during Answers News? And I said, you know what? We're not even going to think about that. So that would be a little scary. But we are on Facebook, on Answers in Genesis Facebook page, on Ken Ham's Facebook page, and on YouTube, Answers in Genesis YouTube channel. Yep. So if you want to join us there, we see some people are getting on. We kind of just do some chit chat here.
I'm seeing Colorado, North Carolina, hi Bodie in Georgia. So yeah, we got people hopping on.
Arizona.
Right, so.
Somebody said Arizona has 2 seasons, hot and not so hot. So there you go.
That's probably about right. They have a little bit of rain though, that one time of the year.
Yeah. So we're going to start with just some, like I say, some things so people get the notifications and get on. And one of the things that Bodie and I did recently was we both attended the, along with other speakers and scientists from here, the International Conference on Creationism, which is held about every 4 or 5 years in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is basically a large group of creation scientists from all over the world that come and present their research and give papers and presentations. And so it's a great time.
Yeah, it's a great time. You get a chance to connect with a lot of other creationists that come in from all over the world and just get a chance to chat with them about some of the research that they've been doing. They get to present on some of the stuff, and it is a peer-reviewed conference that they have, and they actually have proceedings for all that. So it is fascinating to be able to do that, but you have to keep your eyes open because it's not like it's a yearly thing or anything like that. But every once in a while they do that. So it was nice for us to be there.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I'm a science geek at heart, so I love going and hearing all of the different research on, you know, like for example, how do we understand how our body doesn't end up rejecting or destroying all the good bacteria that we have. Well, it turns out there's like all these little viruses that basically coat the bacteria so our immune system doesn't see it. And it keeps them alive in there. Like, how cool is that? Like, you know, really studying. I mean, when you think about the incredible design that has to have gone into that, I mean, that can't just evolve.
It is neat seeing some of that research. They'll have geology, astronomy, and you know, the biological sciences. You know, sometimes there's history reviews and things like that. But
archaeology,
I like to see some of that kind of stuff.
So it's a really good time.
I want to encourage your researchers, you know, and you know, sometimes they battle over things, but you know, that's what it's there for. That's what a peer review process is in place for.
All right, so I want to mention too, we have a women's conference coming up April 5th and 6th of 2019. And it's called Sacred, Embracing God's Design for Sexuality. So this is for ladies only, sorry guys. But we encourage you to come and if you have daughters that are, I would say, 13 or 14 and above, I encourage you to bring them as well. Because we're going to talk about a lot of the hot topics that are in our society today, dealing with the issue of sexuality and how to look at those from a biblical perspective.
So you're telling me if there's a parent or a grandparent that doesn't want to talk to their kids about it, they can bring those ladies there.
Still your responsibility, but we're going to be talking a lot about these, and you can go to answersforwomen.org to find out registration information.
And this is going to be held at the Ark Encounter as well, right on site.
We will be the first national conference that AIG has, Answers in Genesis has at the Ark. So we have a new 2,500 seat auditorium called Answers Center, and so we're super excited about being there and being able to have this conference there and have the space for it. So I head up that conference, so I'm really excited about it. So hope that you'll find out more information about that. Okay, we're getting lots of people on here. Hi, Craig from New York City. I know you're on here a lot, so special shout out to you. And Wisconsin, Manchester, UK. So lots. Of
I've seen people floating in all across the United States here. They may not realize we have tons of Canadians in the audience today.
We do.
Let's welcome our audience.
Yeah, I forgot.
Hello, everyone.
Come on, make
Let them know. They can hear you. All right. Now I want just the Canadians to clap really loud and let everybody know you're here. Look at that.
Loud Canadian.
Look at that. So that's incredible.
Yeah.
All right.
So, all right. So our first article for today is Evolution Timeframes Get a Rethink After Scientists Take a Closer Look at Earth's First Animals. So this is about, the whole story starts out, when did animals originate? And so they're studying a new fossil. Now, let me see if I can pronounce this. Stromatovarus sigmoglena. That's the only time I'm going to say it. Okay. And it comes from the Ediacaran. I said that right? It comes from the Ediacaran period. And it's kind of a frond, feathery kind of animal, like you would see in the oceans and things like that.
And it's fully formed. You know, it's a fascinating little fossil here that they found.
Right.
Okay, just so people understand what's going on. If you look at the rock layers, you get down toward the very bottom, you have the Cambrian rock layer down there. And in the secular world, they're kind of shocked at the Cambrian because when you look in there, you see massive numbers of fully formed animals.
Right.
And fully formed creatures, and they called that the Cambrian explosion. So in the mind of an evolutionist, you have to have some sort of missing links to lead up to those. And so they said, well, let's look just under that, and that's the Ediacaran. And so they're looking at that, expecting to find all these little transitional forms to lead up to that Cambrian explosion. And lo and behold, they look in there, and they're finding fully formed creatures.
And they're finding ones that were not just in the Ediacaran, but then they also see them in the Cambrian. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute, I thought these were transitioning into.
Right.
And the thing for me, from a biological perspective, looking at this, is you've got a complex animal now, even earlier in their mind, earlier in the fossil record. So there's even less time for that organism to have evolved. I mean, that's a real problem for evolution because you need a lot of time for evolution to work because it works by slow, random processes. So this is really problematic for them.
Yeah, you know, this is kind of what we expect, you know, with regards to early sediments and flood sediments and things like that.
Right.
You know, finding this kind of stuff. It's the stuff that was lowest in the fossil record, the first stuff buried. Hey, we expect to find this. This is kind of a neat confirmation of Scripture.
But it shows again, you know, it says, they said in the article, some older ideas on early animal evolution may need to be revised. Yep, here we go again. The textbooks are never, never up to date because it's constantly changing. I mean, probably every week we have an article like this.
Oh, we need to rewrite evolution.
Oh, we need to rewrite this, you know.
Okay, so there's somebody here that commented that says, wow, hi Canada, for all the people in the audience.
So once again, you know, they're changing their minds, and it's still very problematic for evolution because now you have more complexity earlier on, so how do you explain that? We're getting a lot of people, man, it's like Florida, Dallas,
I'm seeing them all over.
Iowa, Massachusetts, Port Charlotte, Florida. My in-laws actually have a vacation home there that they stay in, so hello, people in Port Charlotte. So, okay.
And you didn't tell me that?
Sorry. You're not invited. All right. Fossilized beetle is early evidence of insect pollinator. Okay, so this is a supposedly 99-million-year-old beetle that's been preserved in amber alongside some grains of pollen. And they think that the beetle was the one pollinating because it's not that the pollen was right on the beetle, but it was really close to it. And beetles do this today. So 99 million years ago they were doing it, and they're still doing the exact same thing today.
Interesting. You know, they say this is the earliest evidence of an insect pollinator. However, if you look up, they've actually found bees in their own dating system at 100 million years old. So bees were actually around before this, so how can that be the earliest? I mean, that's a problem. It just goes to show, you know, you should do a little bit better research on that, even by their own standard. And that oldest bee was published in Live Science back in October 2006. So, I mean, it goes back. But now, of course, we would argue with the dates. You know, what they're doing is they're finding these fossils in flood sediment. So this is where they were buried. And, yeah, I mean, flying creatures were made on day 5. And,
and the fact that you're finding beetles that were doing the same thing then as they're doing now, I mean, nothing's changed. It's not evolution. It's fully formed then. It's fully formed now. It's doing very similar.
Well, you know, it's interesting, the whole chicken and the egg, you know, question that people ask. Of course, the chicken came first because God created the chicken first. You know, on day 5, being a flying creature, of course. You know, when you look at this, well, which came first? The pollinators, like the beetles and the bees, or the plants? Well, the plants actually came first. They were on day 3, so having these
Well,
come
and
a
it's
little
really
later,
a
still
problem
not
for
a big deal.
evolution because the pollen-pollinator relationship is actually very complex. I mean, especially if you look at some of these orchids and things like that, and the things that are very specific to pollinating them, there's no way this could have evolved in some sort of stepwise fashion over millions of years. It's just too specific and too complex.
Those symbiotic relationships are incredible. I mean, we just think of the bacteria and the viruses and stuff in our own bodies, you know, and that symbiotic relationship there. Hey, plants and insects have that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, pretty amazing. All right, being human, big toe clung on longest to primate origin. So it's saying that as we evolved from some sort of shared ancestry with the apes, that our big toe, supposedly, was the last thing to evolve. And they say the big toe is really what helps us walk because it helps us push off, especially when we're walking and running.
I think they're just monkeying around with this.
Bodie is known for his puns, in case you're joining us.
They're not
for
always the best,
time.
I'll admit that. But no, I mean, what they're doing, they're looking at living and fossil human relatives, and they include apes and monkeys, and they go in and they compare, and they say, okay, here's what they look like. We must have something over here then, you know, for a deviant missing link, essentially.
Right.
So they automatically assume that it was there because their story demands it.
Right,
But they
exactly.
don't actually see it. They don't actually find this. So
Yeah,
I look at this and I go, this is nothing but a story.
And it's totally, I mean, they say, you know, for everything to work together, the foot bones first had to evolve to accommodate the unique biomechanical demands of bipedalism. Okay, so how do you do that? I mean, how do you evolve that in a stepwise fashion? Okay, that is not a pun. I did not intend that. How do you evolve that in a stepwise fashion over millions of years? Because if it's not all there together, then it's not useful, and so the organism is not going to keep it, right? And so that's definitely a problem.
Well, why do they keep asking the question why? You know, it's like one of the things we see with a number of evolutionary writings, and we see that in this particular article, is they're like, well, why would evolution do this? Why would this occur? Is there really a why? I mean, evolution doesn't have a mind. It is a concept, number one. And I mean, I think it's a very poor concept, but nonetheless, people are asking, well, why would evolution do this sort of thing? Well, why ask the question why? It's actually illogical.
Evolution doesn't have a mind. And so and we both picked up on that in this article as they kept kind of asking that over and over again. They said, modern humans have increased the stability of the joint. But what? No, that's what we call reification, because modern humans, we don't think, oh, let me change X, Y, and Z so my stability of my joint will be better so I can do this, okay? Because that's not how evolution works. It's not conscious in any way.
The article in here says, becoming human was not a giant step. I'm like, okay. But
That's
it says,
their pun.
but a series of gradual changes. How do you have a gradual change in a big toe? Do you have like a third of a toe? I mean,
I don't know.
do you have part of a toenail print or what?
And what I had to laugh at was they say, you know, they're trying to explain why the big toe evolved. They said maybe it was climate change. Here we go again. Everything somehow is related to climate change.
Not just climate change, because climate change led to the loss of forests. Since we don't have forests, then wait a second, we do have forests. They're all over the world.
Yeah. Whatever, I don't know. This is total
maybe not Arizona
storytelling.
so much.
Yeah, total storytelling, that's for sure. Somebody on here said, no, the big toe is what helps us find furniture in the dark. Yeah.
That's right.
I would agree with that. Yeah, definitely. Okay.
You know, that happens way too. I actually stubbed my toe just the other day. I was walking right through our hallway, and you know, my wife brilliantly decided to set something there. So in the middle of the night when I was walking, I totally drilled it. I'm like, really? In the middle of the hallway?
Yeah.
And of course, I flip the light on, move it. I'm like, okay. So
well,
yeah, there's a lot of
funny story on that too. Soon after my husband and I got married, and he had moved everything into the apartment, you know, that I had been living in, and so I wasn't used to where the furniture and stuff was now, and so I was walking, and I slammed my little toe actually and fractured it. Like a week after we got married, or 2 weeks after we got married, there I was with a fractured toe because things weren't. So they're very good at finding things. That we don't think should be there. Okay, a resurrected gene may protect elephants from cancer. Okay, it's not resurrected. Okay, it's been there all along. All right, and so they talk about it being resurrected roughly 59 million years ago. What? This makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Okay, so they find a gene today in elephants.
Right.
And they automatically assume it's 59 million years ago that
they're comparing it to other, what they would consider probably closely related, evolutionarily speaking, organisms, and maybe it's defunct in them, but it's okay in elephants, and they say that happened somehow. In other words, it was probably active in all of them, but 59 million years ago, it became active in these guys. You know, it was, or became inactive in everybody else, active in these, whatever their story is that they want to make up about this, but it's
not 58
reality.
million. It has to be 59.
I guess, yeah. So what it is, it's actually really cool.
That's imaginary time, by the way.
It's a gene called LIF6 that triggers another gene called TP53. The elephants have 20 copies of this gene, and it actually senses cellular damage in cells and basically kills them. So the cells don't keep dividing, which happens a lot with cancer cells. They're damaged cells, and so
that's what it is. Yeah, and they just continue to grow and replicate. Yeah.
So I mean, it's a cool find, and it may actually, but it has nothing to do with evolution. It's just the way that elephants don't seem to get cancer as much.
That's the key. It has very little to do with evolution. It has to do with how your body regulates and how the genes work with each other.
Yep.
And that is actually fascinating research. We want to encourage that kind of research. That's the observable and repeatable research that we can do. It says in here that when they did their research, about 4.8% of elephants died of cancer. So they still do die of cancer.
Yeah.
But that's about a third. I actually did the numbers. For humans worldwide, that die of cancer, it's about 15%, roughly in that neighborhood. So really, it's about we're about 3 times more.
Right. So they're hoping this will maybe have some practical applications, because we do carry that gene. We just don't carry 20 copies of that gene, so we don't produce as much of the protein.
Right, the TP53.
Right. So it may be a way. So that's a great. So you don't even need all this stuff. I mean, who cares whether? I mean, even though I don't believe in evolution, who cares if it came into existence 59 million years ago or now? It's here now. And so that's
I would suggest God created them with that, and it provides a useful purpose. We may not understand all the aspects, and that's another thing too. We may see a relationship between this, but there may be more factors involved that we just simply haven't put our finger on it yet. So,
right, and it may have worked perfectly. These systems work perfectly before the fall, but after the fall, they don't. And so we get mutations and we have problems.
Right, with sin and the curse in Genesis 3, things changed. I mean, we see animals were cursed. The serpent was cursed more than, other animals, beasts of the field, for example. So, I mean, things have changed. We saw a change in vegetation. Thorns and thistles came about. As a result of that. That's why we need a Savior in Jesus Christ to save us from sin and death. It goes all the way back to the first sin in Genesis chapter 3.
Absolutely. Okay, ancient girls' parents were 2 different human species. So this is getting a lot of airtime. So we've been asked a lot of questions about this.
I've gotten this one quite a bit from people.
Yeah, and so when I saw this, so basically this is taken as a flake of bone, taken that they suppose is 90,000 years old. And when they did the DNA analysis of it, actually at first they didn't even think it was part of a human bone. They thought it was just bone from an animal of some kind. But then when they did the analysis of it, they said, wait a minute, this is human bone. And so then they did the genetic analysis of it and showed that this girl's mother was a Neanderthal, but her father was a Denisovan. And so,
okay, just so the audience understands, who are the Neanderthals and who are the Denisovans?
So they're 2. So I would not regard them as 2 different human species.
They're just people, right?
They're people, just like you and I. They may have looked a little different. Like the Neanderthals had a much more pronounced brow ridge than most people do today.
See, they would run into furniture with their foreheads, not their toes.
And we don't know what Denisovans look like because we only have like part of a pinky finger and a few teeth. So we don't actually have any idea what Denisovans look like. But they're fully human. There's no doubt about that because we have DNA sequence of them and we can compare that to human DNA today and see that it is extremely similar. So they're fully human beings. So this isn't an example. So this is just two humans giving birth to a human.
Right.
That's all it is.
Okay, think of it like this. If you switch the names, wow, someone from England and someone from China had a baby.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the way you kind of need to look at this. Okay, they're all humans. This would have been after the flood, after the Tower of Babel, as people are spreading to different parts of the world.
Yeah. What
What I think is interesting is the Denisovan area, where they found the cave and all that. That's up in an area where a lot of Noah's grandson Tubal, and a lot of his descendants actually settled to that particular area. This may well be somebody who's a descendant of Tubal, of Noah. If you look over here where the Neanderthals were, their map of where we typically find the Neanderthals kind of match where we find a lot of the Celts, which are descendants of Gomer, another one of Noah's grandsons. So, having these people, go to various parts of the world, having them fall in love, get married, and have children, not a big deal. We kind of expect this. This is a great confirmation of what we read in the Bible, I think.
Because when we start with Scripture, these are the kinds of things that we would expect to see. It's not surprising to us. And what kind of got me about this article was it in some ways had kind of a racist tone. I mean, I take it as that because it talks about them interbreeding.
Right.
Well, first of all, they're not animals, they're human beings, okay? So we don't talk about, just like if we were, like the example Bodhi gave, we wouldn't think someone who's from England and someone who's from China having a child, we wouldn't say, ooh, they're interbreeding, okay?
I know, that's crazy.
We would never
My wife's from Australia.
We would never use that language, and we don't need to be using that language here because these are two humans that, had a child, and we can analyze that information today. So it's cool. And a lot of humans do have some Neanderthal DNA, some variations that are specific to Neanderthals, and there's certain humans also, Melanesians, that have some Denisovan DNA in them. So we can still see that even in today.
Well, I wrote a whole book on the Tower of Babel, and it doesn't just look at the physical structure and the archaeology and so forth, but one of the things I like to do is study the different people groups as they go to various parts of the world. And tell me if you guys have ever heard this. I'm just going to speak to the audience here for a moment. Have you ever heard that man evolved out of Africa from lower animals and we got a little bit smarter? And, as we got smarter, we were able to plant our own crops and raise our own crops so we didn't have to be hunters and gatherers anymore. Then we got smart enough to build our own shelters and that sort of thing. And then finally we get civilizations like Indus Valley or Mesopotamia. I've heard that over and over again. But do you realize ancient historians never mention anything about that? That is a brand new history that's been imposed upon generations. You go back to cultures around the world, they actually kept track of their history, not all of them, of course, but throughout North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, these guys, they kept track of their history. A lot of their ancient kings, they had lists that go right back to one of Noah's sons or grandsons, whether they realized it or not. The Queen of England has a lineage that you can take all the way back to Noah. It's fascinating. If you know a little bit about your ancestry, this might be a book you'd be interested in. And it is fascinating. It really is to be able to trace a lot of this.
He loves that stuff. So he's
I
like
do.
an
I love
expert.
that stuff.
So the book is really good on that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Somebody said, love Brody's Tower of Babel book. You're Brody.
Ooh, Brody's Tower of Babel book.
So, yeah, that's Brody. All right, water ice detected on moon's surface. So this is the North and the South Pole, basically, of the moon. That this is actually was discovered back in 2008, 2009, but they finally been able to analyze the data and really be able to understand it. And they said that they know it's in, I guess I never really thought about this, but there's places at the lunar poles that never see daylight because of the way that the moon isn't really tilted as much as we are. And so they never see, it's permanently shadowed. So it's like always minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit, which is obviously very cold. And so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I want to come back to that, but somebody made a comment in here, talking about racism, and that particular issue, and some of the roots to that. You see, things have changed over the years. If you go back to the 1700s, 1800s, I've even read some books, that talked about this sort of issue a long time ago. And when they used to talk about race, they used to say the Irish race or the German race or the English race or the Japanese race or whatever it might be. But all that kind of shifted, particularly in the 1800s, when people started to look at things from an evolutionary perspective. They started to redefine the word race to be lower races and higher races in an evolutionary worldview. And so that's the kind of concepts that we started to see dominate our culture, influence, a lot of the things that were going on, around the Civil War and even after that particular time, leading up to World War II and a lot of the racism there. And, I think that's a fascinating study too. And I don't have the book here with me, but if you guys wanted to find out more about that, we have a book, One Race, One Blood by Ken Ham and Charles Ware, which is an incredible book that looks at the subject.
And we have a kids version too now.
A brand new one that just came out.
Brand new one that's out.
Yep.
So you'll want to check that. We'll post the links there.
That's right. From a biblical perspective,
Facebook.
there's one race.
Right.
It's the human race.
Yeah.
And You know,
We
that
need
right
to
there
keep-
solves
yeah.
racism.
People need to understand that. That's the answer to
Yeah.
racism.
Okay, we can come back to the
All
moon
right, so
now.
more on the moon.
More on the
okay,
moon.
I wanted to talk about the moon and the fact that it's got ice. And one of the things that was interesting to me as I was reading the article was most of the time when we see them saying, oh, we found ice on, you know, whatever planet, it's, oh, there could be life on that planet. I mean, that is like the major emphasis, that people think if you have water, okay, that equals life somehow.
Here's why. In the evolutionary story, you've got life originating in water, like a primordial soup and that sort of thing. They have it starting in water, and then it finally makes its way to land. So that's why they're looking so heavily for water. You gotta have the water there. But you know, for all practical applications, I remember Dr. A. Wilder Smith a long time ago wrote a book on the impossibility of trying to get life out of water. It was fascinating. But finding water here is not a big deal.
Right.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth itself was nothing but formless and pure water. There it is. And so, you know, having water, you know, found in heavenly
water
bodies
doesn't
isn't a
mean
big
life.
deal.
I mean, you've got to have a lot more than water, right?
Yeah.
You've got to have information in DNA, and they don't have that on other planets. So you're not going to have life there. But this is really cool because they might be able to tap into this to give, if we have longer explorations of the moon, to supply water, to supply oxygen, and so it's an interesting applicational.
Yeah. So engineers of the world, if you can get out there and harvest some of the water from the moon, or maybe even from Mars, they found some water on Mars. If you can get that back here and sell it in a bottled form, how many people would buy it? Even a little shot of like moon water. Would you guys buy it? Like, I'm gonna try some, you know?
That'd be pretty cool.
I think it'd be neat, wouldn't it?
There we go. That's a good idea. Okay, Chelsea Clinton claims that abortion added $3.5 trillion to the economy. So this has hit the headlines a lot. And so one of the things, so I would say just first off, abortion is wrong because it murders an image bearer of God. Period. Okay, it is wrong. Besides economics, besides all that, that's why it's wrong. But then what she's trying to do is argue that because women had the right to have an abortion, they were able to abort their children, which meant they were able to stay in the workforce, and they added $3.5 trillion. So abortion is good for the U.S. from an economic perspective.
That's her viewpoint. And she says it added about $3.5 trillion to the economy. You know, bingo! Somebody in the audience nailed it.
Yep.
There's almost 60 million just in the United States that have been put to death, babies. Imagine if they were alive, grown up, paying taxes all this time since 1973. The average American spends about $10,500 on taxes per year. I mean, if you tally that up for the 60 million kids that are missing, and put that per year, each year going back, you know, for 40 years or so here, we have enough money. There would be no national debt. Imagine all these, you know, out of the 60 million or so, some of them are going to start businesses. Some of these businesses are probably going to explode, be multi-billion-dollar businesses that are also paying taxes. 3.5 trillion is nothing.
It's a poor argument.
Nothing.
I mean, it's a poor argument, period. From a biblical perspective, economics never outweighs the value of human life, right? From a biblical perspective, we know that. But we're saying, even if you look at this from an economic perspective, this argument fails dramatically. And we did an article last week on China and the problem with their limiting births, because guess what? Now you don't have a lot, you're missing all these people. You've got an aging population who's not going to be able to work. So how do you maintain your workforce? I mean, how do you maintain people even to take care of those that are aging? And so they're seeing that as a real problem, which we're starting to feel as well here in the United States.
You know, there was a commenter or a commentator here, Eric Erickson, that pointed out that Clinton's argument here sounded like the pro-slavery arguments from the 1800s.
It does.
They're like, hey, it helps out our economy. Who cares about the morality of it?
Right.
It could help out our economy. You know what? As soon as you throw morality out the door for economics, you've already defeated your whole purpose.
Yep, exactly. So that's what we need to understand. There's no argument that's ever good when it comes to abortion. Okay, now we talked about this issue. We've been talking about it on and off for a while, but this is with Trinity Western University in Canada, so for our Canadian audience here. So they wanted to start a law school. And so the problem was, though, the problem is that they have a community covenant, which they require all students to sign, which is basically saying that they will not have sex outside of marriage, and that marriage is defined as between one man and one woman. So you can see where this is heading, right? So the accrediting agency said, no, we will not accredit your law school because you make students sign this community covenant. Well, now...
Yeah, they're basically saying you have to adhere to the secular sexual humanism belief system at this Christian university.
You're not allowed to be a Christian university. You have to do this. So sadly, Trinity Western University has decided not to make students sign the community covenant anymore. So it's sad to me because here we see compromise, right? Well, we're not gonna stand on the truth of God's word. We're not gonna stand for who we are.
It's gonna be an all-inclusive
identity,
college,
right? We're
basically,
just
you
gonna
can believe whatever and come.
Yep.
So that kind of opens the door. Is it really a Christian college anymore if you're going to start allowing people in that could absolutely oppose your school?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's really what's happening.
And what's really frustrating to me is, the university said, we want to successfully position us to better fulfill the Trinity Western University mission. Like, well, what exactly is that?
Well, the mission's changed. That's the thing. They went from having a Christian body, being a Christian institution, to saying, well, we'll have our leadership still be Christian, but everybody else doesn't have to be.
Right.
I mean, would they allow in people who want to be neo-Nazis? Would they allow people in who are pro-rape or pro-murder and things like that? Would they allow that sort of thing? Yeah. If they're going to be all-inclusive, they really should.
Yeah. And they even say this community covenant still has to be signed. It's still mandatory for faculty, staff, and administrators. It won't be for long because the LGBT community says everyone must comply. Everyone must change. And so once you've opened that door a crack, it'll get opened wider. And here's the interesting thing, some other information on TWU. So I know for a fact that they have a biology professor there that teaches evolution, that teaches that Adam and Eve were not real people. And yet, that's part of their statement of faith is that it says, we believe that God created Adam and Eve in his image. Not all your faculty do.
No,
I know
don't.
for a fact this one doesn't. And here's the thing, once you start that slippery slope, well, Adam and Eve aren't real. Well, this isn't true. Well, why can't marriage be whatever you want? Why can't you have whatever relations you want? And so it's a slippery slope that's happening
it really is.
even among their own faculty.
Yeah, well, sadly, we are out of time.
I know, we are out of time. So we didn't get through as many as we thought. We thought it was just two of us,
Yeah, we'll zip
We'd
through
go
this.
through it
No, actually, you
faster.
never know.
But we will cover those on Thursday, and
Correct.
we'll have some new ones as well.
Yeah,
So
and well, maybe Avery.
Well, maybe Avery if she's not gone into labor, and Dr. Tommy Mitchell if she has. So, so we'll see you back on Thursday at 2 o'clock.
All right, God bless you guys.